Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And yes, we are back for seconds talking Thanksgiving spoilers. Yes, this is first time in a while that we've done a spoiler review for something, and I'm excited. This was definitely something we were looking forward to, and it seems to have paid off tenfold for not just us, but a lot of folks. Yes, as I take my glasses off here, I'm looking at Twitter, and it seems like people are just now getting out of those first public showings, and it seems like everybody's got a lot of kind things to say along with us. So it's nice to sit here and be celebrating Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's always fun to either whether it's a screener or an early showing or something like that. And you get on here, you do a review before the bigger audiences have seen it. You never know what the outlook is going to be until you start perusing Twitter that night and seeing what exactly the reactions are. And I'm glad it's overwhelmingly positive from what I've seen. I think this film absolutely deserves all the credit in the world for you know really hitting that slasher genre and that formula, and knocking it out of the park, because apparently over the last couple of years and things we've seen, it's really hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think it would be, but yeah, it's definitely. I guess it just takes that certain formula, and it takes that certain tinge, and just knowing what you're doing. And I got to say, that's the biggest props I can give this film is that Eli Roth definitely knows what he's doing when it comes to telling a nice slasher like slice of 80s comfort food. Like this was exactly what that film turned into. It was just you enjoyed your time in the theater. No, it's not breaking any barriers. It's not going to be, something that I'm going to sit here and say like is as groundbreaking as, and I know I'll get shit for this, like a Skinamarink, where it's like, oh, this is different. This is changing the way that I see a certain subgenre. It's not doing that at all. No, but it's a lot of fucking fun, and I'm having a good time watching the kills, the mystery. Is it kind of paint by numbers? Yes, but it's also very much in line with those 80s slashers that we grew up loving.
Yeah, I mean, you say, is it paint by numbers? Yeah, it can be looked at that way, but it's paint by numbers in all the best ways. Where,
Hmm.
you look at some of these, I guess, films that didn't really hit that slasher formula, right? And you understand what they were going for and the DNA behind it, but they just didn't get there. And I think looking at Thanksgiving, like I said, it deserves all the credit in the world, because yes, the slasher subgenre should not be difficult to obtain and please an audience. But I think over the past probably 5-6 years, it's just been something where there's so much discourse of, there's always something missing in a lot of these films. But Thanksgiving, for me, there isn't really any weak points. We talked about a couple criticisms, but they were so minor that it's just kind of maybe grasping at straws in a sense, just to have some sort of critique, I think, because nothing really bothered me in this film. It was just something where it feels so well rounded. Eli Roth clearly has a great understanding of that slasher subgenre and what the fans are looking for. And I'm really glad for this thing to catch some fire, and over the next week really see what it does when you see a lot of these films that maybe I didn't have a taste for when we're kind of looking at Saw and breaking so many records and really topping the box office. I'm really eager to see what Thanksgiving's going to do.
Yeah, no, me too. I really hope that this has an excellent opening weekend, and I hope it has some legs into next weekend. But nonetheless, we are here to discuss the nitty gritty, all the stuffings, all the guts, all the entrails. We are here to talk some spoilers. And why don't we hop right into things with talking about some of these kills? Because, like, obviously, those are for slasher fans, a lot of what we're here to see. We are here to see the creativity, a lot of the fun. That's what these 80s and 90s slashers were kind of known for, is trying to do something a little bit more creative. When I think of creative kills from those films, I think about Scream with the garage door is one of the ones that is always just kind of like you don't really think about something like that until you're watching it. How does this film stack up as far as creativity and its kills? I think it does a great job. I think that there's a lot of winners here, and some of the ones that really stuck out to me as far as like shocking and gross is easily the parade sequence with the grandfather and the two little girls up front when the float breaks through the back and then skewers the guy's face. Like, just the detail and the amount of just like shock that gave me was just like, holy shit, like that's intense.
The parade scene is easily one of my favorite scenes. It's just complete chaos in
It
terms
is.
of. I know you're specifically talking about that one kill, but for me, what really sticks out during that parade scene is when our killer's dressed as the clown and just has an axe and takes off the turkey's head. For me, so well done, so jarring. I wasn't really expecting it. You're kind of tense. You're wondering what's going to be happening, and with just so many people around, when our killer's a little more stealthy, you wonder how they're going to achieve something. And then one of the things, honestly, during that scene was that clown popped out at me as being very noticeable and very off-putting. So then when he comes back around and takes the turkey's head off on my gate, it's just like one of those absolute gore, but also a great chuckle, and it's really hard to balance that stuff. But and then all that mayhem ensues with the kill you're talking about, and then our Carver getting the characters that he wanted out of the parade, which again, really fast paced, a lot of great stuff. Something that really does stick out in my head.
I agree. And, that's one of the things that they use that as a selling point, as a sticking point in the original trailer, was that sequence where he cuts the turkey's head off. So we all kind of knew it was coming. I really loved how this movie took all those elements from the trailer that we've grown to love over the last 16 years. Between that and then another sequence we'll talk about next, involving the trampoline. You all know what I'm talking about. And, when those scenes came up, they really toyed with you. Eli Roth knew that these were the standout moments, and he would show the guy getting the turkey head put on him. He would show him just in the crowd, just waving to people and, saying Happy Thanksgiving and having all that fun. And we all just knew in the back of our head, this guy's getting his head chopped off. Like, we knew that was coming. And the way they did it, the way they subverted those expectations, again, by, like you said, using the clown suit was really fun. And it was one of those kills that, again, even though I knew what the outcome was going to be, it was still shocking as hell. And it was still one of those things where it's like, when you actually see it come out and actually happen, it's like, it's satisfying, and you're sitting there still going, oof, that's gross.
Yeah, and I think, looking at the kills are great, but also, sometimes films have this tendency to, we talk about it with like Five Nights at Freddy's, where a lot of, off screen, you're not really showing too much, but here, we have the kill and then the amount of gore that is left over, and I think that's really what stuck out for me, especially, I mean, the kills are great, but the amount of gore that we're given in this film is just, you crave it, and it's like, oh my gosh, how many times do we sit here and we're like, I wish we had a little bit more. And I think Eli Roth gave us so much here, because it's like, even when our one character gets his head cut off, and you just see all these entrails and things falling out. I think it was perfectly done. They don't shy away from anything, and again, it's so satisfying. And like you're talking about the references from the trailer, we talked about the trampoline briefly in our non-spoiler review, where they kind of subvert your expectations and switch it up a little bit. And I think that's so much fun. Are we going to get what we saw in the trailer? And we're like, he's probably not going to go that far, but what is he going to do here that's going to kind of make this feel different, make it feel unique to this actual full feature?
Yeah, and I think that they pulled it off really well. Because yeah, it's one of those things where in that trailer, it works. It's great. That trailer's definitely playing up the comedy aspect of it a little more, because yeah, 80s slashers and all those are known for having gratuitous and over the top kills, and a woman getting skewered through her vagina is probably up there as far as just like horrific kills. And I was really just sitting there in the theater. We have our significant others with us, and I'm just sitting there leaning over to my partner, just being like, hey, I know you haven't seen this trailer, but this is about to go crazy. Like, this is going to be insane. Like, I cannot wait for you to see this. And then when they subverted it, I was like, okay, cool. It's fun. It's great. I like it. But I had to explain to them afterwards, because they were like, what did you mean by that? And I just was like, well, in the original trailer, this is what actually happened. She's like, oh, I wish we would have seen that. I'm like, yeah, it would have been a lot. But yeah, I think that whole sequence was just, again, for fans of Grindhouse, for fans of this property and just wanting to see this come to life, it's one of those things you've got to see that. You've got to see that come to fruition, and I'm happy that it was stuck in there.
Yeah, and that's where, we look at other films and I keep mentioning them where it's like, they're so bombarded with references, and it
Mhm.
would have been the easy way to kind of just give us what you had given in that little Grindhouse trailer, but they went something different. I think the trailer itself is an experience from the Grindhouse films, but Thanksgiving the feature is also a different experience where it's like they're obviously you see the parallels, but it's nothing. If you didn't understand the reference, it doesn't take away from the actual experience of the kill or the outcome of the kill. It just is of its own thing. So, and that's really what I like about Thanksgiving was it wasn't something where we're going to recycle a lot of stuff from that original trailer. It was, let's take that stuff, we'll intertwine it, but we'll also make it its own thing for the film.
Absolutely. And I think they really did a great job with that. And let's get into some of those references cuz like yeah, this film I'm dying to see it again. Like I said before this, I'm probably going to try to go see this on Sunday. If not, I might try to go see this next week cuz, the one positive about having day jobs is you get those holiday days off for some people. So I get 2 extra days off next week. One of those days I'm planning on going to see it. I'm thinking Black Friday. I think that would be a great time to go. I want to take some friends. But this has just so many horror references from frame one being just Halloween. It's Halloween. They open up on the house with the breathing, and I just knew I was like, I am transported. I love it. This is nice. This is fun. But there was always that point in my head where I'm like, now is this going to become too much? Is this going to be they're going to walk in there and one of them is going to have on a clown mask or something goofy, and then it's like, are we just going to be reference city all the way through? And I gotta say, for us who are pretty critical of how they use references in a lot of these things, this again, it just feels like all of these were planted specifically for horror fans because a lot of them, they don't take away from the story. I think that's the worst part about doing a reference to something is you have to completely, like, you're on your path, you have to completely do a little circle, half circle there just to take that detour and then get back on your path. This doesn't feel like that. They're really subtle in a lot of places. Yes, some of them are more on the nose, but this was one of them that I really liked. And right at the end, after we get the killer reveal, and he does the My Bloody Valentine thing where and it's from the remake too, where he's walking away with the firefighter's armor on. It's just like, oh, that's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, I think for me, obviously, the Halloween reference was great. Opening up, and it wasn't something I was expecting, but when you hear that breathing, it's like you get instant flashbacks. It's something any horror fans can be able to pick out. But for me, honestly, the pure excitement of the My Bloody Valentine reference toward the end, I was so giddy. And there aren't many references for me that I get super excited about. But we had talked about the trailer on the Sunday Scaries, and we said, it's got a My Bloody Valentine feel. They're really leaning into it. Then when we were in the theater, we leaned over to each other and said, it really does feel like this. And then to get that gratification at the end, to just absolutely know this was in Eli Roth's brain as he was creating this. It's just one of those things where, like I said, I don't get giddy often, but when we saw our killer come out dressed as a firefighter, I was thrilled for that aspect of it, but then also, we mentioned it in the non-spoiler about the potential of a sequel because,
Hmm.
it's like I was hoping we weren't going to get that solid answer toward the end of our killer is going to come back and then we're going to get some sort of closure before the ending credits. I was hoping they were going to leave it open-ended, and they did that. And that's where, I think you should always end on horror. The killer should always still be out there, because whether you do a sequel or not, I think that's just terrifying to the audience. And I think, ending it with that solid My Bloody Valentine reference and then, having the killer still out there, I don't think there was a better way to end this.
Absolutely. And I really liked the follow up after that, where you're right. I was a little worried that they were going to show and wrap it up and really just put the bow on it. Because again, I don't like that stuff all the time either. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, especially in the way they were teeing this up with them showing her sleeping in bed. next to her boyfriend Ryan, who's still alive, and there she's looking in the closet. It's like, oh my god, are we really gonna do this? Where she's gonna pull the Laurie Strode of like, oh, you wouldn't think I do this or whatever, like from Ends when she shoots Corey. It's like, are we really gonna do this? And then no, it's a total Nightmare on Elm Street reference there, where it's just like, she's in the doorway, she turns, and then he just fucking grabs her. He's on fire, and it's so good. Like, it was just another one of those nice little stingers that I was just like, yes, very good, very nice. I like it a lot. And yeah, they quickly wrap that up so that way it's like, yeah, no, that wasn't real. That was just what we were doing for some funsies. And I again, did we need that reference? Probably not. I think the film could have ended where it ended, just like the other My Bloody Valentine. But it's at this point, you've won. The game is over. You won. I'm already on board. It's just a nice little garnish to have.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of drove home that point of the terror is still there, the killer's still out there, and I think that the ending with him escaping as a firefighter would have been fine. We know the threat's still out there, but I think having that little extra ending sequence really drives home the fact that she's still lingering with a lot of things, and I think that even opens up the potential for a sequel even more than that just ending of him as a firefighter walking out. So I think that really kind of put the exclamation point on everything for Thanksgiving, the initial film. But for me, I honestly, I'm sitting with this film, and the more and more I think about it, the more potential I see for a sequel. And we talk about sometimes these films should just have, should just be one and done and don't mess with the formula anymore. But I think with the characters created here, with the town created, I think you can do a lot more. There's one. I'm forgetting his name. The guy who sells the guns.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I'll pull him up for us.
McCarty. Is that what
McCarty,
it?
yeah.
I think if you do a sequel with him being like one of the bigger characters in it, oh my gosh, I would be so for that.
Oh, he was so great. Like, honestly, like he was one of those characters that like kept coming back, and I was just like, I love this. I absolutely like. At first it's kind of ridiculous, it's kind of that jokey goofy character, but as he just keeps coming back up, and when they get to the party scene and they actually humanize him, which I gotta
Yep.
say, taking a slight detour here, so this might go a little over 20 minutes. That's what we're shooting for here, but I gotta say, I really liked the maturity that Eli Roth had here in his script in some points. Like, yes, there's a lot of f bombs, there's a lot of sex jokes and other things like that. All that Eli Roth stuff you expect, and it all works. But um, the fact that you have a sequence with him, who is this just obnoxious goofball character, who actually does show a little bit of that, concern for the lead character and her friends, and is just kind of like, yeah, I throw parties to get high school kids drunk, and I charge $25 a pop because I saw it on Shark Tank. But I also have a heart of gold, and I sell guns, and I have them in all kinds of weird spots in my house. But her father actually coming to her at one point in the film and saying, "Hey, I think that I've been mistreating you. I've been grieving. I think I rushed into my relationship. I'm not regretting that part, but I think that I might have overlooked your feelings." And then to literally a few scenes later, just to be like, "No, we're calling it off. I'm not doing the sale. I'm not doing the Black Friday sale. We're going to catch this guy." Really humanized him. It was one of those things where it's like, at the end of the movie, I'm glad that his character's still around, because in the sequel, I'd love to see his character come back, and then that's when you can really lean into him getting killed or something, where it's like that just leaves more strings for us to go back to, because obviously, with the thing that we've kind of skipped over is this Black Friday opening that sets everything off, and we can kind of just start to discuss the reveals here. But what is your take on just the characters in general when it comes to that? Like, I just thought that was something that kind of shocked me. Did that catch you off guard too?
Yeah, I think looking at that as we talk about McCarty, he gets more and more human throughout the actual film, where we open up and he's almost this comical kind of character where he's throwing out these one-liners and everything, and I was unsure of how I was going to feel about that character. But then when we get to the party and he's giving them a gun, and by the end of that scene he says, keep yourself alive long enough to return it, and there he's becoming more and more human. And then we're at the parade, and he's got he gives our lead character, is it a ring, I think, or
Yeah, it's her
something like that?
dad, his dad's ring that he says
Me.
saved him in Iraq.
Yeah, and and by that time, I feel like he's so human, where it's like we're seeing this trajectory. Whereas sometimes in Eli Roth, I think it's criticism, for those characters in the comedy. I think you can see it maybe in Cabin Fever and Hostel and things like that, where it's like they can kind of fall into this almost unlikability. Um, Throughout the entire film, but I think he has really progressed in terms of being able to develop these characters. And Rick Hoffman, like I said, is a great actor. It would have been so easy to just kind of throw him in that comedy department and just have him deliver one-liners and have him, killed by the end of it in one and done. But I think he pivoted, kind of gave him these emotional ties for the audience as well as the characters on screen. And looking at this, as I already mentioned, the sequel, I think nothing felt unsatisfied, where we didn't have enough of a body count, where it didn't feel like a slasher. I think everyone felt at risk enough, and we saw enough of a body count. But then also he left so much on the table for us to see a part two and to see these characters develop even more, and to make these deaths that we didn't see in the very first one mean that much more in a potential sequel.
Yeah, and I really I think that that's just a merit to how much Eli Roth has how far he's come as a filmmaker, as a director. With especially as a writer too. I know that he had some assistance on this, but like, this was his brainchild. This was something that he came up with, and just to really have that level of just like, okay, let's add a little bit more here. This can be the fun cookie cutter. We're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks slasher film, but we can still have people in it. We can still have some people. And yes, we are giving a lot of credit to these side characters. I still want to reiterate, because I don't want people up in our comments section being like, oh, wow, you're saying these are deep, well rounded characters. They're not. But they, for a horror film like this, a slasher film, it's kind of impressive to be like, okay, that's nice. Those are nice side characters. And again, they're not Sienna level. They're not like that, but they are serviceable. They are fun. They are people that we enjoy seeing on screen, and we'd like to see them come back.
Yeah, and I think there's a happy balance there. Where yes, I think there's scripts that have deep character development, which is great. Sometimes it gets redundant depending on the path that they do take. But when you fall in the slasher genre, a lot of times characters are just so surface level, and there's almost unlikable in a sense, where you just want to see them be killed. And yes, Thanksgiving has characters that are not deep rooted in any sense. I don't think. I think they do fall into that formulaic aspect of a lot of the characters are things that are characters you're going to see at least kind of modeled in other films. And I don't think that was an accident either. But I think he did create these characters that are not 100% unlikable, and that you can spend some time with, and you do want to see them prevail over the slasher that we have. So and I think the happy medium there's a true art to that, where it's like we're not going overly deep, but we're not going too surface level. I think there's an absolute art in terms of screenwriting, and there's a Bloody Disgusting article which is up right now, that he talks about, I think, sitting down with actual actors in the age group to kind of really understand writing, so it doesn't sound like an old man writing for these young kids. And I think that does come through in terms of feeling more authentic than a lot of other slasher subgenre films do, especially in most modern times.
So yes, for our final little piece here, why don't we talk about the reveal? And before we can really dive into who exactly is John Carver, we need to discuss, the inciting incident, which is this Black Friday gone awry. Which, again, as teeing this whole film up, getting into it, I thought that was going to be everything right up front. I thought that we'd spend maybe 5 minutes. That's the opening. We see it all going to shit, and that was everything there. But they surprisingly spend some time with Sheriff Newton and Thomas Wright, who's Patrick Dempsey's character, and Rick Hoffman, and we see a few other characters throughout our story, just celebrating Thanksgiving. We get a little bit of a backstory about just like what this store is, and who is in charge of what, and how this is kind of a controversial thing amongst people for them to, of course, be opening the store Thanksgiving evening instead of on Black Friday. They even call it out. I know a lot of people have been calling that out over the years of just Black Friday is no longer on Friday. It starts like, Thursday afternoon. So, and now in us after post pandemic, it starts the start of November. So, it's just like it's kind of a fun riff on that. But I was shocked how much time we actually got leading into that. And I think that it adds a lot to that final moment when everything goes haywire.
Yeah, and we talked about the opening where it's a solid Halloween reference, but then we kind of get into the, setting of the dinner table in Thanksgiving kind of, and you kind of get this dichotomy of almost the have and have nots, where you have the employees of Right Way, and then you have the owner of Right Way being able to, enjoy dinner and everything, and other employees being called into work. On Black Thursday, I guess. But it's one of those things where I love the time that they did take. They kind of really do build that tension. And I think they make it worth it at the end. And once everything goes awry and we're in the store, I think it's so indicative of the tone of the film because they dive deep into the gore aspect of things. I didn't know that they were really just going to go balls to the wall almost in terms of everything they were going to show during the big incident. But then you also have this mix of almost comedy and gore, which was just a happy marriage for me. As soon as everything was going, just going absolutely nuts, and our audience was having a good time. They were laughing and then being grossed out by splurting blood, and a character dies on a pallet board with a waffle iron in his hand, and someone else yanks it out. I think that again, the happy marriage of gore and comedy, it was just perfect, and it's so indicative of what kind of thrill ride you're going to be in for Thanksgiving. I think it was beautifully done, especially once we learn of the stakes in terms of everything that was at play here.
Yeah, and let's get into that. So, at the beginning of the film, we see Patrick Dempsey's character, the sheriff. He is the guy we see in everything, Sheriff Eric Newland. I always keep wanting to call him Newton. He goes over to the house of Mitch Collins, who is the store manager, and he's having Thanksgiving with him. And you see Gina Garrison's character, who she's in this for a little bit, but she is kind of our inciting incident. And she plays Amanda Collins, who, in the big twist, we find out not only is Sheriff Newland John Carver, but him and Amanda were having an affair. And they were, fooling around the side. She was about to leave her husband. She was pregnant, and she dies brutally in this, kind of riot-esque takeover of the store on Black Friday. She gets knocked down, crushed. Like, doesn't her head get kind of smacked between two grocery carts? I had two people walk in front of me right at that moment.
I believe that's how it goes down. And then she gets her hair caught in the the wheel.
Yep,
it rips
and
off her
scalps
her scalp.
Yep, and it's rough, it's gruff, and her husband sees it, and the sheriff sees it, and he just starts screaming and shooting his gun in the air. We get the title sequence, and that is it. He was gonna marry her, he was gonna run off with her and start a new life. And because of the store being open, and because our characters, our main group of teenagers here, the daughter of the owner of the store being able to let her friends in, which starts this riot because people get pissed off when they see them rooting around for the Black Friday deals. They all become targets. He spends the next year going over archived footage and trying to figure out, who is responsible for all of this. And that's when he starts setting the table, as he says, plotting his revenge. And, it's one of those things where it's not a huge shock. I think that for some people, they might figure it out as the film progresses. I think you get to a moment towards the third act. I know there's a specific moment right when she is running away and she runs through the forest and she finds him on the ground. And we don't see any inciting incident to lead up to that, where I was just like, okay, you have definitely moved up to the top of my suspect list. And then they do it. They have him as the killer, but Patrick Dempsey fucking sells it. Like, he gives me that My Bloody Valentine vibe right there, where it's like, he just goes full bore. He's screaming his heart out. He's, saying all kinds of crazy things like, what does he say? There will be no leftovers,
Yeah.
Jessica, and stuff like that. Like the kind of twang he adds to his voice, it all works for me. I really like it. I genuinely think it's one of those things where at first I was like, oh, okay, that was pretty safe. But as you're watching it and you're letting it sink in, it's kind of like, I think I would have been more disappointed had it been anybody else.
Yeah, I think, where you say it's paint by numbers at the start of this, where it's like paint by numbers in all the best ways, where, I think the biggest indictment here is probably, almost that uh, scream method. I remember, even as a kid, wondering why Laurie Metcalf was deduced to a small role until I realized toward the end of it that she's the killer. And it was like, oh, okay, well, that's why. And, looking at Patrick Dempsey being a big name that's attached to this film, being the sheriff, where I think they do a good job of having him,
He's in it quite a
around.
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to kind of justify it, but it was still, kind of lingering to be like, he's such a big name. There's just got to be a little bit more here. So, I think for me, it was always in my head, but as soon as, like you, when he was laying down on the ground, I was like, there was no lead up to this. This was just
Hmm.
weird. And, and I think they pull the trigger fast enough for us to be, not to, be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I saw it coming from a mile away, but, it's like everything's unfolding so quick. And I think that's so well done that it's like by the time we're putting everything together, the wheels are already spinning and their emotion for us to be like, okay, well, they're already telling us that right now. So, and like you said, I absolutely love his performance when he's out of the Carver suit and just being, Patrick Dempsey and just turning up that volume. That's something that, I wish we could have lived in that moment a little bit longer. But again, that Carver's such a great design. I can't complain with that either. But that ending, talk about, a big payoff where it's like, I couldn't get enough of it. We have the big inflatable turkey. You have him
Yeah,
as
I
an
was about to
axe. I
say.
mean, it's all firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, it's a really a fantastic way to wrap that whole thing up there with the big inflatable turkey. And yeah, I get it. Like, if you are not on board with this, then you've probably checked out an hour and a half ago. Like, honestly, because like I just don't think this movie's for you. Because yes, there are people who are probably going to say that's goofy, but like it is just the right amount of cheese. It's just the right amount of like, yeah, that's what I like right there. Because again, him not dying from it and him walking away and them saying, "Oh, we couldn't find a body. We searched the place high and low." It just adds to it. And again, earlier we didn't really get to touch on this, but they have the mask on top of the big oven, and it gets burned, and it looks like the Halloween Kills mask. And I just remember sitting there going, I absolutely fucking love it. I love the reference. I love the way that it looks. It looks even better. And now you're telling me that if we bring Patrick Dempsey back for a sequel, he's more than likely going to be charred and like all scarred and everything. Like, oh, it's so good. Like, I love everything about that. And, I think it all, again, it works really well. I think that it all comes together in a very satisfying, homage to 80s slasher films and just an overall fun time at the movies. And I really love this. This is one of the few times where we are so busy between screeners, between videos we're trying to put out, essays, things like that. But I'm really actively going to try my best to make time to go see this again because I just had that much fun.
Yeah, and that's honestly the biggest takeaway from here is so much fun throughout the entire duration here. They take you on such a ride with the gore, with the comedy, just with the storytelling in general, and the creation of Plymouth, Massachusetts, and really feeling like you're part of the town. And we talked about the slasher design, which again, absolute perfection, a lot of fun. It's that same amount of I think people chuckled at the very beginning of it, and then you start taking it as a threat, especially after that first diner scene, where you saw it in the trailer where she's frozen to the freezer, and then gets cut in half, and during the trying to get into the dumpster. So it's one of those things where I think they find that happy medium of some moments are comical, some moments are just absolutely terrifying. And Thanksgiving is something that I can honestly say is going to have unlimited rewatch value for me. I cannot wait to own this so I can continuously put it on throughout the snowy seasons that we're going to
Oh
be
yeah.
having, because this, I get, like you said, it's comfort food. This is something that I can easily throw on and sit down and lose myself for 10 minutes, then get up and go do something, and then come back 10 minutes later and still be completely interested in the film.
Yeah, and it is one of those ones that will be on a constant rotation for me as well, especially around this time of year. Like I said in our review, for me, for a long time, there was really just one quintessential Thanksgiving horror movie for me, and that was Thanksgiving. And for a lot of people, it's a cheap, silly film, but it's something that it's goofy, it's fun, and I have a lot of memories associated with it because it's like I found that movie on Netflix with my friends, like in high school. It's like it has some sentimental value there. And yeah, I know there's films like Blood Rage and a few others that are Thanksgiving horror films, but nothing that really screamed out Thanksgiving horror film like Thanksgiving does. And it runs with it, and it never stops. And I really love this. And like I said in the non spoiler review, they could come out with 5 sequels to this. I'll check them all out as they progressively get worse, because this is again a character and a franchise that I could see that, yeah, give it the 80s treatment, go full bore, keep it going, send it direct to video. I don't care, because this is something that we haven't had in a long time, where we have an icon, we have somebody like this. Because, like, say what you will, Art the Clown, like he's got his own special niche to this, where it's like I don't see him as an 80s slasher villain. He's kind of his own different thing. This is an 80s slasher horror icon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this one, I think Art the Clown's in a different department a little bit. I
Yeah,
think,
he's got his own feel to him. He's original. Like, and not to say that this isn't, but he's got a lot more going on than just putting on a costume and killing people. It's hard to do that right, and they did it with this.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, I think Art the Clown has a different feel for storytelling than Thanksgiving, where, I think I, Terrifier has to be something I think an audience is probably prepared to watch. You know what I mean? Where it's nothing, when I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch Terrifier, I'm going to sit down and watch Terrifier. Where Thanksgiving is something that is very easily digestible. If you want some gore, it's not like that ultra violent gore. I mean, it has a line there, but I think it kind of satisfies your craving for that gore as well as some comedy in it. So I think I put them on different playing fields. I think Thanksgiving's probably gonna cater to the masses a little bit more than Terrifier does, just because Art the Clown, that level of violence is a little niche, I think, to some people, special general audiences when they get a feel for it. But I think Thanksgiving really does kind of check all the boxes for something like a Friday the 13th, for a Halloween, for a Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it feels a little bit more in line with those guys.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You said it best, sir. But yeah, guys, that is going to wrap us up for our spoiler review of Thanksgiving. Yes, we got a lot more that we could say, but we've been talking for, over 30 minutes here, 40 minutes or so. And I just think that, there's enough said here now. I'm sure once we do start getting podcast episodes back up again in the future here, this would be something I'd love to, once it gets a little bit out there, we get some bonus features. We listen to some more interviews with Eli Roth. I want to see a really nice kind of like featurette on there of like 16 years in the making, like what it took to get there, what it took to get us to this point. And, I think that that's really important to me as a fan. Will they do it? I don't know. That might be something we need to wait another 10 years for a Scream Factory edition or something to come out. But hey, I'm all for it. I am excited to talk more Thanksgiving. But for now, that's all that we can say.
Yeah, it was a great run. I'm eager to see this again. As we get into December to Dismember, not this year, but maybe next year. This could be a very nice kickoff for the season festivities. So we'll keep that in mind, especially if we get enough material out there. If the Blu-ray looks great with some bonus materials and things like that, would be very interesting.
A commentary,
Yes,
if there's enough info there.
some stuff we can sink our teeth in to kind of get those in-depth stories like we'd like to do on the podcast. But this will definitely be revisited some point down the line, because we're going to keep gushing about this one throughout the rest of this year and definitely into next year. Is this the next Prey? I don't know, but maybe.
maybe. I don't think the lead up wasn't as intense. Like, literally, I think every video there for like 6 months we talked about Prey. Like, that was it. This, it was on and off, Definitely anytime we talked slasher, it came up. But yeah, I think that this is definitely going to be Prey on the other side. For now that we've seen it, it's going to be talked about a lot. But alrighty, guys, it's going to wrap us up there. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.